you know who he is, and he was saying like, oh, he's like, I guess he's gonna go on a set of Mad Men.
Did you get new glasses?
No, I've had these. I use them for screens, like
Oh,
where.
yeah, they look good.
Thanks. You and Sindu look so gorgeous. I'm getting emotional seeing you together.
I actually am too. I'm getting really excited and also feeling, you know, that happy sad that you get when you get to see people during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Sindu? Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm just trying out the YouTube live thing. So.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see like we have some people waiting.
Oh.
Which is nice. And then I think we should be going live soon, I think.
Was it 7 to 10 minutes, Sebastian, or I forget?
Yeah, 7 to 10 minutes, whatever you're comfortable with in that range. You can go a little bit over or under, but we'll try to keep it in that range.
For sure.
And you can go a little bit over or under, but okay.
Whoa.
Whoops, that was me testing. All right, so I think it should be going live soon.
Oh, Kelly, you really are an architect now.
Well, I don't know. It's between this one and this one.
That was pretty sick.
Scary?
No, sick.
Oh, okay.
I'm in California, so we say something's hella sick.
Okay, I thought you said scary.
I know. Not at all.
So is this the favorite more than this one?
I want the board meeting back.
Yeah.
But it's Friday night. It's time to party in the city.
You're still
all about business tonight.
You're still all business. Friday, Saturday, it don't matter. Like that.
I like that one.
This one? Okay. Okay. It's settled. Thank you. It's so good to look at Sindoo. Oh my gosh. I miss looking at you, Sindoo, in person.
March, right? I haven't seen you since March.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it was like 20 years ago.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We had lunch when having lunch was safe.
Okay, so I think I'm going to try to actually, it might have given everyone the wrong YouTube link, so I'm going to see if I can.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to share it on that chat because I can post something on there and see if I can get people there. But I'm going to share this in the chat with y'all so you can share the event with people that you know are tuning in. Yeah, sorry about this. Let me see if I can fix it.
Looks like I'm in. I'm seeing it.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I was in.
Yeah, sorry about this. Let me see if I can fix it.
I just typed in something in the chat.
Oh, yeah, there's Annie.
I'm seeing it.
Oh, Annie. Yeah, I thought I was in.
This. Let me see if I can fix it. Okay.
Just typed in something.
Oh, yeah, there's Clancy. Oh, yeah, there's Annie.
I'm seeing it.
Oh, Annie. Yeah, I thought I was in.
There's Annie.
I'm seeing it.
Oh, Annie.
This.
Let me see if I can fix it.
Okay.
Just type in something.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy. Oh yeah, there's Annie.
I'm seeing it.
Oh, Annie. Yeah, I thought that was in.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Seeing it. Let me see if I can fix it. Okay.
Just type in something.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Are we on a loop?
Yeah.
Seeing it.
Oh, Annie.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Seeing it. Let me see if I can fix it. Okay.
Just type in something.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Are we on a loop?
Yeah.
Seeing it.
Oh, Annie.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Seeing it. Let me see if I can.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Are we on a loop?
Yeah.
Seeing it.
Oh yeah, there's Clancy.
Are we on a loop?
Yeah.
Welcome back, Mike.
Hi. Did I miss anything important?
Just some weird loop that's been playing for like 3 minutes.
That would be
Okay.
heavy,
It
because
looks
I
like
have
it's working now.
things going.
Can people see us on YouTube? Hey, everybody. It might take a minute. All right. So good evening, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Hopefully, let's see, we have quite a few people in the audience. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. But just to introduce us, this is Bandwidth, the reading series. We are monthly on virtual reading series. This is our third event. And I'm your host for the evening, Sebastian Paramo. And I have my co-host, Kelly Ever. Let's see, who's in the bottom corner over here. And we have 4 exciting readers for you. And we'll just kind of go ahead and dive in. We're going to begin with Alan Chazaro, whose latest book, Piñata Theory, just came out with Black Lawrence Press. Alan Chazaro is the author of This Is Not a Frank Ocean Cover Album and Piñata Theory. He is a graduate of June Jordan's Poetry for the People program at UC Berkeley and a former Lawrence Ferlinghetti Fellow at the University of San Francisco. He's a former high school teacher, is currently serving a creative writing adjunct professor in the Bay Area and the co-founding editor of Headfake, an online NBA zine. He's proudly born and raised in the Bay Area. Please welcome Alan.
Thank you for the intro, dude, for everybody being here. Shout out to Mexico, since my parents are from Mexico. Yeah, a lot of Piñata Theory deals with me being a dual citizen and being raised in the States, but having most of my friends and family still being in Mexico or coming from Mexico. So yeah, a lot of the poems deal with that, but not all of them. This one definitely doesn't. This one's called Litany Ending with Night. The morning air is spiked with thorns. I am not able to walk through fire, though maybe I have tried. Shame is a parade of licking tongues and everyone is invited. Ask me if I am redefining what I know or retracing false contours. Ask me if shadows are empty or reveal what is already there. The translation of being naked is certainty mixed with uncertainty. Have you ever prayed in your abuela's tongue? There is a sun and a moon dogging every battlefield. There's a broken window inside all of us. The vibes are similar to Frank Ocean's white Ferrari blaring from inside a Chevrolet. Play this on repeat for everyone to move with. Cross the desert dying on the shores of my lips. Crash your mouth and hip bone against my dark. Our lightning is a super bloom of waste flaring into night. This next one's the title poem. It's called Piñata Theory. Blindfolded, I was given a broomstick and told to hit a moving target. When I swung my dizzy arms, an adult on a chair would pull on a rope to yank the rainbow fluff of goods beyond my reach. Everyone laughed and sang about hitting the cardboard carcass, but I only became more lost. To prove them wrong, I focused harder in the darkness. Consider the violence of living, how breath can be fractured and displaced while walking. Take bones, for example, how they are firm enough for everyday activity, but collapse on impact. I fear these injuries, revelations, knowing what's beneath. Each day is a split in the skull, a bang in the lungs. If I am piñata, then hang me with strings of coriander and rainbow dust while playing retro surf music and popping party balloons until I'm spilling myself and you are reaching to gather whatever part of me is unbroken. Tonight is a cliffside. Everyone is loose and dismembering something might bring us together. We went from smashing Spider-Mans to smashing institutions we can't see, getting our spins and tumbles from tequila and sierras, pretending to be ourselves but never trusting the breaks, a different kind of broken, a slower waking up, each morning becoming more monster, needing a harder sort of destruction. This glue was never meant to hold us together. We were covered in layers of pretty color, paper mache faces, superhero assemblages of warehouse scraps. Beneath RoboCop exteriors, we stomach lollipops, our breakage a celebration. The truth, we were made for beatdowns. Shout out piñatas, guys. Like, what a weird ass thing that we feel these things and then we all clap while we violently rip it apart and then we scramble to grab everything that falls out of it. Yeah. The original piñatas, by the way, I did hella research when I was like obsessed with the piñata for a period, that they were originally created by the Spaniards to break the 7 sins, and it was like a very religious, they had like the 7 puntitos, like those little cones. So they all represented the 7 sins. And I was just really interested in that concept of like breaking shit, but also kind of like punishing you, but then like celebrating at the same time. Very fucked up, as a lot of Mexicano culture is kind of like weirdly twisted like that, right? It's got a lot of beauty and sort of darkness at the same time. This next poem is called Throw Away the Cowboy Shirts. Like other men, he secreted himself north so he could own a Chevy and drive over paved roads. To his wife and 5 kids back in Durango, he flickered until fading. Nothing but his side of the mattress and some extra plates to remind them a father once lived there. In the East Bay Area, he worked under the table, a cash-only laborer. Eventually, he married Grandma, an American, native, her skin dark and leathery as a bargained purse. He couldn't speak English, didn't know what his name meant. Fortunado, a borracho, could build a wall a week after he tore the old ones down, and a gambler too, out late with the guys in the back shed, smoking and singing and pissing on grass he mowed that afternoon. Mornings, He'd stumble home with tequila on his mustache, barking why breakfast wasn't ready. He was lucky, fortunado, bragged about the time he punched a cop only to be bailed out of jail by a woman. Once, when he upset grandma like often, like oceans, we threatened to call immigration. But how could we, the children of immigrants ourselves? We didn't want him living in our house, at our parties, using our toilet, our hand soap. One night, he left to get drunk. A cousin crouched over a pile of clothes inside his room and pissed, his unofficial send-off. For months, her urine clung to the collar of his cowboy shirts. I'm just gonna do one more poem. I usually write about how much I love my community, but I wanted to challenge myself at times to look at the negative sides of the people we live with and the communities we're part of. So that poem I tried to like write with anger because I typically am not like an angry person, but yeah, that's where that one came from. Clínica Jalapa, or visiting hours. This is the last one. I'm sitting by your side, abuela, your breath in this room, a dwindle of fugitive air, a crush of falling clouds. Outside, a geometry of smog and chaos erases the stars while I sit with nothing clenched beneath my tongue. There is no translation for this, no wrapping you inside tomorrows. Abuelo waits in the broken lobby as I tune into the deep hum of your bones. These mountains cannot be shoveled because Abuelita is a forest and we've fallen and we've cried and she spanked us for crying, but she always prayed for us. En el nombre del Padre, el Hijo y el Espíritu Santo, because you'd better holy cross yourself with 2 fingers, forehead, chest, left shoulder, right shoulder, when passing a church, any church, especially my abuelo, that never faithful macho who always told us, eres cuervo, translation, you are crow. And I learned our name is a mountain because on a nearby mountain, abuelo built a home for us, praying abuela would live to see it from inside. The breath of this land is an orchid night passing over a rumble of stone roads. It's a gentle touch, the moon-fallen undulation of hills and banana trees swaying in Veracruz mist. It's the slow-rotting bridge, a music wandering around rooms where abuelo has hammered every inch, has hammered bottles of mezcal, where nothing shatters when things are broken and no one notices when Adidas have 4 stripes. Here, freedom rides in the front seat of a dying Ford. Thanks, everybody. Excited to hear the other readers too.
Thank you so much, Alan. That was incredible. Also, I have to say, I really love your website. It's so cool. Yeah. I'm so honored to be introducing Colleen Mayo, whose work I really, really admire. Colleen's writing appears or is forthcoming in The Sun, Crazy Horse, The Rumpus, Hobart, The Chattahoochee Review, The Boiler, and elsewhere. Her work has received special mention from the 2019 Push Art Prize, the Jerome Stern Series Spotlight Award for Nonfiction, and an AWP Intro Journals Award for Fiction. She holds an MFA in fiction from Florida State University, woo woo, and is PhD student in fiction at the University of North Texas in Denton. She's currently at work on a novel set in her hometown of Austin, which I'm so excited for, and I know it's going to be incredible. Colleen also happens to be just an incredible person. Everybody give it up for Colleen.
Thank you, Kelly. That's so nice of you. And also we are neighbors. Sebastian and Kelly and Anthony and I live across the street or catty corner from each other, which I just want everybody to know. And oh, before I forget, Alan, there's an artist in the DFW area. Her name is Christian Cruz, and she's a poet and a performance artist and a visual artist. And she has a piece called Piñata Dance. And if you haven't heard of her, you should check her out. She's really cool. Before I forget. But I wanted to, I'm going to read 4 short flash pieces. They're a mix of essay and fiction. And I'm going to start with a fiction piece called February. Dad brings home 24 roses, red for mom and for me pink. For himself, he has a bag from Taco Bell and a handle of vodka. Mom takes her reds. This is perfect, she says. Her eyes are puffy, her hands shake. Not 15 minutes ago, she was pacing around me in tears. We've been waiting for hours. I've already decided to teach him a lesson. When Dad offers me my dozen, I keep my arms locked at my sides. I look at him like I'm looking at a crack on the wall. My brown eyes are his eyes. My red hair is his hair. I've determined that because we share blood, he loves me more than her. This means I can beat him. Dad smiles at me like I'm slow. Fish, these are for you. He leans to set the roses by the sink and falls against the counter. He's drunk. I smile because men will always give themselves away. Dad leaves the kitchen with his Taco Bell. Mom and I go upstairs. The pink roses stay by the sink. Upstairs, Mom and I lie down on my twin bed. She wraps around me and strokes my hair. Our bodies are the same size now, and for some reason, this breaks my heart. From outside, I can hear the noises of the city moving quickly, alarms and honks and laughter. After she falls asleep, I go back downstairs. Dad's asleep too, conked out on the couch with a burrito on his stomach. On the coffee table next to him is his water glass half full of vodka. I watch him for a long time. I watch his white face and wait for him to wake up. I lean close to his head. Wake up, I say. He doesn't. I slap him across the cheek. His skin feels damp and rubbery. I slap him again. Wake up, I yell when my palm hits his rubber cheek. His eyes open. What? He says. He sits up, rubs his cheek, and lights up one of his shitty menthol cigarettes. What? He says. He sounds so dumb. I pick up his glass of vodka. Watch this, I say. I sit in the desk chair next to him and drink down the rest of the glass. It hurts my throat, but I close my eyes and imagine it's just Gatorade. I set the glass down and pick up his pack of shitty menthol cigarettes and his silver Zippo. Watch this, I say, and cross my legs, take out a cigarette. He rubs his mouth, but I point my finger at him. Just watch, I remind him. I light and smoke the cigarette. It burns too, but I pretend it's candy. Dad rubs his eyes. Fish, I'm sorry, he says. He looks at the floor. I get it. How easy this is, I realize, to do all the things you're not supposed to. And this is a essay. It's a mom essay. That was a dad story, and this is a mom essay. And it's set in Austin in one of my favorite places, which is my parents' back patio. And it's called Timble. My parents' campy mesh-screened patio was a space between hard and soft, not outside, not in. It was rustic and loud. It had a crooked metal roof and long walls that stretched the whole length of the house. Mom hosted patio parties back there when I was a kid, especially around the time of summer when a crowd of cicadas came to hook themselves along the patio's perimeter and sing. I remember being young and small and barefoot on the concrete floor. Look closely and see how the cicada shells vibrate as the Texas Hill Country winds sift in. Or maybe it's the bass music getting round and loud that moves them. Or maybe it's the way my parents' friends all pull back the screen door and let the metal latch slam shut, how they yell out wild greetings to each other from across the patio floor. Motherfucker, ow, ow, get your ass over here. How the drinks shift them back and forth from hard to soft. I liked to sweep up one of my mother's cats and cradle it as I shadowed the adults, matching my sways with theirs. I liked to whisper press their words back to them. Ah, shit, look who it is. Howdy. Adult cicadas, I learned from a drunk friend of my parents at one of these parties, are called nymphs. A cicada's sound is produced by a membrane called the timble as it rattles against an organ. First, the cicada hatches from its egg and ant-like crawls up to feed on tree sap. Second, it digs underground and eats tree roots for 2 to 17 years. Third, it emerges a nymph, ready to cling to a patio screen through the night, through the human tunes and rowdy talk, through the booze, straight through to morning, to patio deflated. In the morning, I would tiptoe around the friends as they slept, big-bodied, crooked and damp from booze, sweat, and drool, limp fingertips brushing against ashtrays mounded with cigarette butts, mom's fat cats moving curiously around the human sleepers, their tails flirting against shins and the tops of shoes, mom herself awake but just barely as she pulls me back inside. Outside, the cicadas are still clinging, still singing, still more body than shell. And this is a flash story set in Austin, my hometown, and it's called With Susanna. Susanna and I sit like queens outside her restaurant on South Congress. She's ordered us oysters, ham, and plates of tiny salted pickles that cost more than a pack of cigarettes. The windowsills are lined with baskets of cacti. We're different now, grown, although acting like teenagers as we flirt with Paul, one of her waiters. Paul's a coy Texas boy from Lubbock. Everyone around here, Susanna tells me, calls him Buddy after Buddy Holly. She hired him 6 weeks back. She says he knows his wine and how to charm the wives of all the fancy couples who frequent her restaurant. Susanna winks at me when Paul gets us another bottle of champagne. You know those East Coast wenches, she says. They can't get over a cowboy smile. I wink back and remember how 15 years ago, Susanna was loud and thick-waisted. I made fun of her for all the words she mispronounced. But if I needed $1, Susanna had 5. If I needed a drink, Susanna had Lone Stars and water bottles full of liquor. If I needed a ride, she had a black Toyota with weed in the console and a glove box stashed with condoms for safety. We used to joke about the condoms because we never used them. Instead, she'd drive her Toyota around Austin and we'd find roads shaded with live oaks to kiss one another under. It still excites me to remember first lying against her long stomach, how much difference there was to discover between our bodies, two shapes that, before Susanna, I'd assumed would be too similar to ever make sense as a set. It's 11 at night. Heel after heel clicks down South Congress. The women around us have skinny legs and handbags smooth as butter. Paul arrives to refill our champagne flutes, and we toast to Susanna's success. She bought this place out from an organic grocery store. Before that, the space was a bakery. 15 years ago, it was a metal shack that sold the best greasy hamburgers in town. Now she leans back with her fingers woven together on the table. You're a businesswoman, I tell her, a total boss. Susanna takes my hand and squeezes it 3 times. I want to say a corny line, let's get out of here, or follow me, then grab the champagne and lead her down an alleyway out back to light cigarettes and pass the bottle. I want Susanna to drink it all before getting closer. I want her to say, now this feels good. And then I want us to find some Lone Star. I want a plastic water bottle full of liquor. I want to be 16 and stoned in the back of her Toyota. She's left a handful of condoms in the glove box for safety, knowing full well that's not what we're after at all. And this is the final essay, short, and it's about the experience of giving birth to my daughter, which, I don't know, maybe similar to like love and grief. It's the most generic experience, but then when it happens to you, you feel like it is super unique and something that you really want to be able to put in writing, or at least I did. So thanks for listening to me read this, because I've never read it before, but I'm excited to talk about it. My daughter's 6 months old now, so it's still kind of fresh. Okay, it's called Unscrewing. I tell myself it doesn't matter how you were born, but I will always remember the room where I waited. And for whatever reason, I can still see the whiteboard in the room's dark corner with your name written on it in the young nurse's bubble print. Welcome, Cecilia. The top half of each letter smeared into bluish stains from where they wrote and erased for a third time, wrote the date, 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I waited for you to come through night and morning and night again, from June to July. What a haul, 33 hours across those 3 days. I waited. And I remember how I stared at that whiteboard with your name and no date until I started to believe that time was working to prove something to me about mothers and babies, something I might try later to sum up into a cheesy line and toss out to people who ask me about giving birth. And corny shit like that really pisses me off, but I catch myself saying it anyway, as if the experience of labor has to have multiple meanings, as if actions have to translate into slogans or metaphors about life, as if a hard labor is supposed to be my first lesson on the sacrifice of motherhood or the futility of pretending to be in control, which is bullshit for many reasons, but for one, because no one needs labor to understand pain, sacrifice, motherhood, as if pain is our only proof that life is working. The reality is that plenty of things in life are painful but unproductive, even ineffective, like my contractions, which hurt so much but carried you nowhere. And in the end, they accomplished nothing, not even 7 centimeters, barely even 6. My contractions just crashed through us again and again for 30 hours, for 3 days, for moon and sun and moon again, until I forgot the edge between body and space, until I forgot who I was besides a space for your body, until I was not body, only pieces of body in pain, and then nobody, bruised meat, until I got the epidural, and then I was cold water, then air, then finally something heavy and formless like sludge. It started to feel like you might not ever come, but suddenly it was time for the C-section. I cried. I cried out of relief, but also out of exhaustion and shame for having lost to a body. And now I'm embarrassed to have felt shame. I remember the nurse writing the final date, what would be the right date, on the whiteboard as I was rolled out and down the hall to the operating room. My body was rotated like a heavy sausage as they moved me from the bed to the table. And then I remember a series of numb, clay-like tugs, unscrewing you, the doctor's words used afterwards to describe it, an unscrewing, which made me laugh since screwing is what started you to begin with, before you were pulled out. And then came the terrible silence before you screamed, and finally I saw your funny wedged head and your purple body bloated with fluid. An unscrewing. Can that be the metaphor? Your body, a screw, rattled from my body, the machine. Little screw, little bit. You are your own machine now, a collection of pieces that can create anything. You are warm, welcoming, not incapable of pain. Thank you.
Wow, Colleen. It was really, really great. Yeah, just I love hearing you read, and yeah, hearing you read again has made me very emotional. And I know I'm not the only one out there in the crowd emotional about hearing you read. We all miss you a lot. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Sorry. Okay, up next is also another incredible prose writer. Let's see. S.J. Sindu, whose books I have here I can show off. S.J. Sindu is a Tamil diaspora author and educator. Sindu's first novel, Marriage of a Thousand Lies. Oh no, it's not gonna do it. There it is. Marriage of a Thousand Lies. Won the Publishing Triangle Edmund White Award for debut fiction and the Golden Crown Literary Society Award for debut fiction. 2003 Lambda Literary Fellow. Sindhu holds a PhD in English from Florida State University, woo woo, and teaches at the University of Toronto. Cindy's second novel, Blue Skin Gods, is forthcoming in summer 2021, and recently it acquired a British publisher. Also, this is Sindhu's, let me see if you can see it. Sindhu's chapbook with Split Lip Press. I once met you, but you were dead. Love the title, love the book. Both are available at your local bookstores and online. All right. I think that's all for the introduction, except to say Sindhu is just also an incredible person whose work has taught me about how to write about certain subjects, and also whose example has taught me how to be. Thank you, Sindhu. We're all ready now.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be reading with y'all, and it's thank you so much. I decided to read from a new chapbook that I'm working on called Dominant Genes. And the first, I'm just gonna read poems. And the first poem is called Gods in the Surf. And because Kelly and Colleen, you're part of this reading, and because there are Florida State people in the audience, this is inspired by our summer trips to St. George Island beaches. So this is called Gods in the Surf. I envy my American city friends. Their impractical swimsuits made to be seen, not touched by sea. Unable to stand in weak Florida surf. I was born by the ocean, an island child. The core of me, salt water and seagulls howling. We wade into the Gulf. The ocean holds us. Amniotic fluid shot with jumping mullets. Jellyfish constellations too small to see, worming their stinging tendrils into skin. Waves spitting shark eggs and tangles of seaweed. Pelicans strafe the water. We gorge on chips, chug shitty beer under a rainbow umbrella. My city friends tell stories, innocent childhood beach trips, Florida vacations, coconut sunscreen. Back home, people saw gods in the surf, watery limbs and hair made of dirty foam. Fishermen went out to sea, came back, nets full of prawns to bombed out homes. Children tried to hide in the sand, evading military planes, only to shatter on landmines. I never saw visions in the waves, but I knew a boat with no motor and no lights could take me across a lagoon at night. And if I heard a helicopter, I should sink my body into the ocean and trust it to hold me. This one is called Pant Hoot, and it is inspired by a colleague of mine's book. It's called The Chimps of Fauna Sanctuary, and it's about chimps that have been rescued and are now in a sanctuary, but they've been rescued from labs where they've been experimented on. Yesterday, a man visited my class, taught us all how to laugh like chimpanzees, and together we vocalized, hoo, 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 invoking survivor chimps in a sanctuary outside Montreal. I wanted to know how often they laughed. Chimps freed from labs, cut open every week, shot up with tranquilizers, injected with HIV, housed in floating cages. Rachel, the saved chimp, has episodes. She chews herself, bites her own fingers bloody. Only last week, I laid in bed, screaming and hitting myself in the face until my partner spread his body out over mine like a gravity blanket. In middle school, I poked my wrists with needles, planting seeds or venting steam. Surviving doesn't always mean you're healed. When they're not ramming shoulders into cage bars or spinning themselves in endless stress circles, the chimps laugh. Hoo, Who, who, who. This one is called Sun God, and it refers to, in the Mahabharata, there is one of the main characters, his name is Karna, and his origin story is a lot like Moses, but his the way his life plays out is less so. In the Mahabharata, Karna the infant is set afloat in a basket. Illegitimate son of a princess and the sun. Raised by a merchant, his real story is one of self-destruction. I try to be an expert on this subject. Karna grows up to be an archer, the finest in the world, until his little half-brother comes along to best him. Karna finally makes a friend. Just his luck, it's the villain of our tale, and now he's on the wrong side of a holy war. All the gods get involved, even his mother comes to him, the mother he yearns for, but now she's come and revealed herself only to ask him not to kill his half-brother. Karna is no Moses, and he will have no redemption, no hordes of followers, no one to pray over him. No, he will be a symbol of how even the sun will abandon us, of how the wrong birth is deserving of pity but not herohood. And how exactly did the sun get a woman pregnant is what I want to know. I am told this is a bad question. I'm full of bad questions. Like if I peel open my labia in the light, will I too have to send away a child in a basket on the river? And what about masturbation? Was the princess being punished for digging inside herself for her own deep pleasure? Why can't women step inside the temple when they're bleeding? I imagine little Karna sits at breakfast while his adoptive mother stirs the sambar, and he is full of bad questions. Like, if you're my real mother, then why do I feel like a god? And what I wanted to know at his age was, if one man's freedom fighter is another man's terrorist, then are we on the wrong side of this war? But this is a bad question. This is the last poem. It's called Dominant Genes. From the wombs of true believers, I came out faithless, a godless, decadent heathen. But somewhere in my foggy ancestral memory, I recall that women used to worship snakes. We'd put out milk for cobras, hoping they'd leave the baby in the crib alone. And if they drank from our offering, we were guaranteed good luck for a week. But that was long ago, before the Eve-hating white men came with injections of snake fear shot right into our pagan faith. Now when we see a cobra in the house, we scream, and the neighbors run over with hoes and machetes. One time when I was little, I saw one the size of my arm slithering on our veranda, and I got to scream, cobra, cobra, snake, everyone. And they all came, men yelling to save me, my grandfather wielding a kitchen knife, hacking the cobra to bits right there in our backyard garden. My mother's mother lived to be 100, insisted on sleeping in her very own house until the very end. But my mother is afraid of snakes, and as a child, tormenting her was a favorite pastime. I'd beg snake toys from relatives and chase her. I'd twist snakes out of newspapers and old scarves. Watching my mother scream and run away, I laughed. I know now that it's a phobia, that she had no control over her reaction, but back then her revulsion was a sign of weakness, and I could feel like the strong one. I guess I've always had a serpent tongue, though I learned early to silence its bite. This too is a gift from the women of my family. I can cut through a lover's blood during any fight. This is a liability, this ability to destroy a person. When I told my mother I wanted to be a writer, she said nothing. She didn't have to. We come from a country where writer means dead child. In Harry Potter, speaking serpent tongue meant you were evil, But really, I think J.K. Rowling couldn't imagine herself out of her Christianity-addled brain, like how Ray Bradbury could think up LCD wall TVs, but not a world in which women had careers. My mother tells me to write nice stories, to keep my serpent tongue caged. This is her wisdom. In this new world, my ancestral power is to be feared. I'm young and I ignore her, but she still goes to sleep every night thinking, dead child, dead child, dead child. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Sindhu. That was incredible. Yeah, and thank you everyone so far who has read. Colleen and Alan. Really loved everyone's selections so far. Um, I love how eclectic it is. But our next reader is Mike Soto. He's the author of A Grave is Given Supper. It's out from Deep Vellum Books. He is also the author of the chapbooks Beyond the Shadows, Inc. and Dallas Spleen. He received his MFA from Sarah Lawrence College and was awarded the James Merrill Poetry Fellowship by Vermont Studio Center in 2019. And his poetry collection was actually adapted recently into an original literary theatrical performance by Teatro Dallas, directed by Claudia Acosta and starring Elena Hurst. And it is an incredible performance, and it's going to be available for streaming pretty soon. And Mike can tell us more about that, but please welcome Mike Soto.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Okay, so yeah, so this is my book, like as Sebastian noted, and yeah, we just had a theatrical adaptation, which for poets, like I don't know how common that is. If anyone has any suggestions for poetry books that have been adapted to the stage, I'm currently doing that, and I sort of did a stripped down version with Teatro Dallas, which I was really pleased with, and streaming version January 15th. So I'll make that public and share it widely. So a little bit about the book to set it up. So this book tells a story in poetry. It tells a story about two protagonists who meet amidst the drug war along the border of the US and Mexico, a fictional border town that I call El Sumidero. And for the poems that I'm going to read, just know that the two protagonists, one is named Topito and the other is named Consuelo. And the folk saint Jesus Malverde plays a big role in the book and in the journey of Topito in particular. If you don't know who he is, this is him right here. Sort of appropriated by people in the drug trade, but has a long history stretching back to maybe even the 1900s during the Porfiriato in Mexico. So I'll read a few poems, like 4 or 5. This first one is called Untitled Tunnel with Horse and Rider. And in it, Topito sort of hears rumors of the shrine of Malverde and seeks to find it. Untitled Tunnel with Horse and Rider. That night told my life, be a tunnel. Connect the gold green wind to the breath you'll use to clear the dust caked on Malverde's shrine. To reach the unlit side of my life, I became a prodigy, suffering to wake from a dream twice the size of my sleep even then. When people said a curse, a weight that doubled at night, that death disguised as dreaming sat on my chest while I slept. But I only felt misunderstood. When I overheard a rumor, the first ever shrine to Malverde lay hidden in plain sight in a used car lot somewhere in Sumidero, I took it as a life and death matter to see the unseen. After years of wandering lots of old Beetles, Buick LeSabres, luxury Broncos, getting kicked out of dealerships for being bearded and weird, after leaping waves of barbed wire on walls at night. A dash covered in banana leaves called to me by name. I opened the door to a late model Astro, hollowed out to house the stones that first made his grave. Above them, a cornucopia slipped around the vague bust of Malverde. Finally, with my chance, I took the deepest breath I owned, blew the veil from his face, and when I placed my hat on his head, the trembling I carried for years inside me paused like a deer from drinking water. And in the non-distance between us awoke a neon quiet where I dumped all the marigolds of all the cemeteries I've seen, lit the candles I didn't bring, and poured him the añejo I could never afford. A space where I could sign my name with my knees and ask for help. I knew the next phase of my life would need a different tunnel, one that connected my ignorance to an isthmus where I'm a rider letting his horse graze the grass. This one's called Topito's Poise. To mute the blood, enter the room with a neon labyrinth. To lay my weapon down by its entrance, walk the spiral path as a string of silver memories gets brighter in my mind. My grandfather braiding a sling, my grandmother tearing tortillas into a bowl of milk, and the cats coming out of nowhere. To stand over the trap door at the heart of the labyrinth, open it, and find a second spiral in the stairwell. To set foot on a ground teeming with light, pull out the 38 hidden in my jacket, cock the hammer back, and approach deliberately. To sense the crow perched on the table understands why I've come. And when it flies into the darkness of an empty doorway, a man in a snakeskin vest emerges. And when he tells me, and when he asks me why the hat he gave me isn't on my head, that space wobbles like a red comb on a black rooster. And when I tell him I placed it on Malverde's head, his smile is all silver. His hand holds out a lizard that has shed its tail. So part of writing this book was imagining a fictional border town. I didn't grow up along the border, but I did grow up sort of in both cultures, Mexico and in the US. And one of the things that I incorporated, this just sort of came out as I was writing the book, sort of riffing on different ways to call the wall different names. And I sort of like stumbled upon calling it the wall commonly known as the brow of God. And I think I got that from seeing images of the wall in Tijuana go into the ocean, and sometimes seems like it could go to the other side. So I use that to sort of imagine a wall that would stretch that far, or would, you know, I mean, it's pretty much, I don't know, it seems pretty accurate to me, you know, like the wall between the US and Mexico is just like this monster, and it continues to be built even as Trump leaves office. You know, some of it is very rudimentary, some of it is high tech, some of it uses natural barriers. So this poem sort of came out of that, and it's central to the story as well. The wall commonly known as the brow of God. In Sumidero, the wall is always looming, night and day our North Star. Blunt reminder of the difference between this life and the one in El Norte. By far the reason why the ground is gutted with tunnels, decades of desperate maneuvers, so many names trapped in trying. If not a tunnel that connects a pink corner store basement to the bathroom of a Texaco, where a razor and a change of clothes wait, then a tunnel that connects a restaurant table, always reserved to the empty pool of a house in Calexico. If not the tunnel that takes you to a Malverde shrine in Agua Prieta, said to be teeming with luck, then a tunnel that runs through a copper mine to a greenhouse in Las Cruces. The above ground alternative. Snake yourself into the engine block of a truck. Agree to have your body stacked under cargo. Endure the heat rising exponentially in a trailer inching towards the border with a sea of other vehicles, all in the same limbo. Covering desert, valley, and mountains. The wall is an endless mind of steel bars east of Nogales, creased slabs in the worst parts of Sumidero, where many use the barrier as the fourth wall of their homes. Some sections of the wall are rigged with ground sensors and tracked by drones, and some are an open invitation to walk a cemetery of scorched sand. But the section stitched into the minds of everyone that lives here is a section of the wall most have never seen. Miles away, where they say the wall goes into the ocean, and the constant fog serves to hide that it ends, or to maintain the awe of it going all the way across. And so these last two poems I'll read are centered around Consuelo, the other protagonists of the story that I've told here. And so for whatever reason, I always knew that this poem would start the book because I sort of like that it was a mistake. And in it, in this poem, Consuelo makes the mistake of taking shelter in an unfinished church. And this is sort of like central to the story and how the protagonists met. So these next two poems are both Consuelo poems. Blank Chapel or Consuelo's Mistake. The empty doorway cried escape to her by name. So she took the invitation to step in, unwrap the rain from her face and wait for the storm to pay its sudden visit. But seeing the vandalized walls, message started and smeared, the mad steering of a hand through paint. To Consuelo, the ruined whitewash was blindness smeared into sight. A rage she shouldn't have recognized, the one house of God she shouldn't have rushed into. Floors recently laid down, walls primed just the day before, but the bust of Malverde set to arrive at the front door that afternoon. Nothing to stop her from getting closer, tasting first with her finger the glimmer and the grit. Nobody to keep her from gliding her tongue across the wall, deciding salt from the moon, what rush leaves and laughter up the ladder of her spine. And no one with her in the silence after, when someone cleared their throat, when at once she knew the mud her bare feet dragged, the shawl she let fall on the floor, that she would be pulled out by much more than her hair, turning to find the faces like a firing squad armed with blanks, with blame, with stares. And this poem is sort of like the redemption poem that comes sort of like later in the book, but a companion to the poem I just read. Malverde Chapel or Consuelo's Revenge. Gratitude inscribed in gold. Carefully thought out dedications on plaques for cargo passed safely across the border. Black hats stuffed with dollars. Copies recently obtained deeds and passports. Some arrive in monster trucks, others in vintage cars with airbrush murals on their hood paying homage. Those who believe more and more people seek Malverde's help for distorted reasons say nothing. Don't say anything about the vendors selling keychains, Malverde wallets, the rows of plastic busts. Consuelo skirts through the crowd, moves in like a cloud over the day to darken it. She recognizes the faces, the man with the flat top and a black leather jacket, the one with the face of an iguana, the other wearing mirrored sunglasses had a diamond grill that read Chango when he smiled at her. Consuelo gets close to the man with the flat top. For a minute, he stares right at her, but can't place who she is. Consuelo holds her hand out, shows him a prickly pear split down the middle. Its ultraviolet redness irresistible. He can't help but reach for it and shock his hand with spines. By the time he looks up, his eyes are yellow. The room is lit with faces trying not to look. And Consuelo is in the street, thinking how much better chapel looked hollowed out, the bright hum of its emptiness, the ecstasy of landing in front of those walls, pushed by a storm into that space Pepito had smeared, the delirium. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike, again. What an incredible evening so far. So if anyone is interested, we're going to be doing a brief Q&A, and you can type in some questions in the chat and I'll share them with our authors. We can kind of just begin. I guess I'm interested in, Mike, maybe could you talk a little bit more about the process of translating your poems to theatrical performance?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think I'm still in the process of doing it as a published screenplay, which I think is like still sort of a mind-bending challenge. But so this Grave is Game and Supper was 52 poems, and we had to whittle it down to about 15 to sort of fit into 45 minutes. So I had I did write the book as a story, but it's not, it's really hard to tell story in poems. And I think like, it was just like a process of like, what can we stage in terms of like just stripping it down to like a linear narrative. And luckily for me, like my book sort of follows the narrative of El Topo. So there's already a story in it, but I officially haven't started writing the screenplay. I mean, I have a good start because we already put it on, but I don't know. One of the central challenges that I have even before I start writing the published screenplay is like, how do you break that up? I mean, do you break the poems into dialogue? Do you fictionalize them? So, I mean, I'm still like in a sort of like fresh space where I feel like I don't even know how to approach it exactly, but it also feels like really exciting. But I will say that, seeing the theatrical production of my book on stage, I mean, it just blows away any kind of reading that I could ever do, and any kind of, in terms of like what I thought my words were, like, Elena Hurst, the actress, it's just incredible to think how much meaning someone else can inject into your work, to the point where it's like what I meant wasn't even what I meant. I think it was something else. That was really cool. I mean, it made me like, I already respected people who work in theater a lot, but I mean, like an amazing actress like Elena is just such a instrument, and can really take words to a completely different level. Like, mad respect for actors and actresses.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Do you know when you'll find out about the link for the streaming of the play?
Yeah, January 15th. It should be out. And we're all sort of like really excited to see that, because we did it during COVID, so it's like it was a limited audience and it was outside, and we had to like get it all in 45 minutes. And but like a lot of my friends across the country asked to see it, and we wanted to get out there. So streaming is we're lucky enough to find a videographer last minute, and yeah, January 15th, it's coming out. So excited.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So hopefully y'all can find Mike on social media, because that's probably where he'll post it. He's on Twitter and Instagram. We have a question for Colleen. So I guess you read an essay about, being a new mother. So someone's asking about being both a mother and a writer right now, especially I guess during COVID. Um, do you want
I
to?
don't know, man. um like how does it, I don't have the YouTube pulled up. Is the question just like how does that happen? Like the time? Oh, sorry, Sebastian, you were muted.
Oh, what's it like being both a mother and a writer?
I don't I feel hopefully I'll be able to answer this question way more eloquently when she's like 18. But um m- most of my time right now, and most of my mental time is occupied with thinking about being a mother and a parent more than it is being a writer. And I'm only now about 6 months in, really forcing myself to make time to write. Maybe I think she started sleeping through the night, and so that's been huge. This is such a practical answer to, I wish I had like a poetic way of saying it. Um, yeah, it's been hard. It's been hard. And it's been tough with the pandemic, because I feel like there's just zero opportunity to go outside. So the combination of everything being at home because of we're all at home, and then everything being at home because I have a newborn baby intense. At the same time, I'm so grateful because I get to witness so much time of her life now. Like, and in a weird way, something I'm grateful for is that we get to, I think it helps us mark time in a way that the pandemic robs you of. Like, because I was pregnant for starting in March. I was halfway into my pregnancy, and then she was born in July, and now she's almost 6 months old. So her entire life and half of my pregnancy have been shaped by the pandemic. And I get the gift of getting to know Cecilia throughout it. So this time will never be completely ugly for me, because I'll always have Cecilia as what shaped 2020. So I don't know, that didn't really answer about writing, but I guess just as a person, it's a mixed bag of being a new parent. I'm really glad she's not school aged, because I don't know how people with kids the people who have kids who have to be in school right now are handling it. That seems totally insane. Yeah.
No, that's some said that was a lovely answer, and I think it's a great answer. Um, and thank you also for sharing that essay. I think it also speaks to it again. And Alan, I think I had a question for you about your collection. So in Piñata theory, I noticed that you have a lot of really cool cultural references here that you use to speak to you know some of the themes that you comment on in your book. And um, I haven't had a chance to read your other collection yet, but this is not a Frank Ocean cover album. I think is also seems to carry over into this book as well. So I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about how you see that shaping your manuscript, or if that's something that you set out to do, or if you could speak a little bit more on that process.
Cool. So just to clarify, how the Frank Ocean and Piñata theory sort of related, or
Just how they're related, and the how you use like pop culture
okay,
and
word.
yeah, things like that.
Yeah. No, so I grew up. I was born in the late '80s, and I grew up in the '90s in the Bay Area, which is an extremely diverse region that like I've seen it change violently. I say violently, maybe aggressively, economically violently. It's been highly gentrified, as I know cities like Austin have been, for example. But I've been to a lot of places around the world and lived in other parts of the world, and the Bay Area to me is like the epicenter of gentrification, because you get all these people coming. First, like there was like the gold rush, and now we're just living in like the technological gold rush, right? So I think I've been exposed to like I literally, my dad has a house where Google is, I'm not joking, like across the freeway. So I've seen all of that stuff come and go as a young person. And I grew up with like hip hop, and I grew up in a house of all men. My mom never lived in the house with me, not a day in my life, and neither did my sister. So you know, I grew up watching boxing, football, basketball, listening to Tupac, and just not really being supervised for most of my adolescence. And you know, poetry came to me really late when I was in community college. And I never took like any preparation to go to college or anything. So by the time I was discovering poetry formally, I had already, you know, experienced most of my expression through graffiti and rapping, which was more acceptable as a young man, how I grew up, to be expressing yourself in those forms. So once I wanted to merge that experience, because I want to, like, I want other young men who grew up how I did to pick up some of these poems and be like, oh damn, like, you know, Andre Nicotina and E40, who are like hella random ass Bay Area rappers that I've never seen written about in literature, are in this book. And when I give this book to my friends, who are mostly dudes that work construction or at restaurants, etc., like, I want them to see themselves in the poems, and also for it to be universal, of course. So I don't know. I just find pop culture in the Bay Area. I wanted all of that energy to be, and being a millennial, smartphones, and then being addicted to smartphones. And like, I kind of wanted all that fragmented everything to just messily be in the books.
Yeah, I think that also perfectly describes how I see your title in the book, The Piñata Theory, because I know like when I break open the piñata, I always get excited when there's all kinds of different candies or things that you don't know what to expect in there. And that seems how, especially a lot of us millennials grew up, you know, there's like a lot of different pop culture out there that was shaping, you know, how we came up. So I love that, how you're doing that. And
Really quick question, dude, just hella fast. What was your favorite candy out of the piñata?
my favorite candy is always the spicy candy.
Nice. That there's a lot. You had a lot of options then.
Yeah, I like the ones that, you know, you get the like spicy like Lucas type candy on the lollipop.
Watermelon shaped ones with the chili coating on top of it.
Yeah.
Mango paletas.
Oh, dude, those are so bomb. Con the chile on top of it type? Or?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a rare piñata stuffing, but when they have it, I'll like push little kids out of the way. Move. Yeah, but those are great.
Okay, I have a question for SJ. So when SJ was at FSU, they started a queer theory reading group. And because we didn't really have a queer studies program, like with a capital Q. So Sindhu kind of, you know, started this community of readers, and it was the first time I had started reading. So Sindhu basically introduced me to queer theory, which I still, you know, hold on, you know, I'm still reading a lot of. And I'm wondering how, you know, the theoretical language informs your work. We've bonded over it a lot, but we haven't really talked about it technically, like how, because I see some like patterns of it from your essays that you've written. So if you just talk about that in general, like across genre, like how does the, you know, theoretical language play into your work, if at all?
That's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question, and it's wonderful. Thank you for asking me that. To me, I view queer theory and queer studies in general as a methodology. So in the same ways that a sociologist might use queer methodologies in their research, I approach my writing with a queer methodology, in that I'm really interested in the spaces between definitions. I'm interested, like, for example, and this was a question in the YouTube chat, like, what's it like to write poetry after writing prose for so long? And that's, to me, another question of methodology, like the space between poetry and prose. What exists in that middle ground, in that liminal space, where in that moment of slippage between poetry to prose and prose to poetry. I'm really interested in what happens in those kinds of spaces. And for me, the theoretical grounding is always queer theory, right? Like I'm really interested in queer theory as a scholar, but as an artist, I find it to be a tool or a set of tools to approach my own writing. And I find, especially like even when I'm writing novels, to approach the revision process with an eye to queer theory and to figuring out how to complicate the what seems to come easily in the novel. So what seems to be good or what seems to be bad in the novel, and how do you actually complicate those definitions? How do you complicate our questions of morality, our understandings of ethics? This is like that's what interests me really, is I guess the spaces in between that we don't normally think about. And for me, that that is traced back to a lot of queer theory and theorists. And I'm really interested, maybe my dream is to someday be like Maggie Nelson and write some sort of auto theory. I am not there yet. Maybe when I'm, older and more mature and have more life experience and more scholarship under my belt. But that is one of my goals, is to write some sort of auto theory that combines poetry and prose and memoir and fiction and critical theory, specifically queer theory.
Wow, I almost wish you hadn't told me that, because I just want that to happen right now. Thank you, Sindhu. Also, if you want to provide space for talking about your next book that's coming out, if you want to tell us a little bit about that, that would be great too. But no pressure.
No, I mean, it's coming out in a weirdly almost pandemic time. Like, I don't know what June will look like for anyone. Because like, I don't know if I'll do a book tour. I don't know if I can travel. I don't know what will happen with the vaccine. So it's all up in the air. So I'm very happy to talk about it. It's called Blue Skinned Gods. It's available for pre-order right now in the US and Canada. And yeah, I don't know, I'm excited. It's about fundamental Hinduism and this sort of need for people to cling to faith. And it's about cults, and I don't know, it's an interesting time right now because India is sort of becoming more and more engulfed in fundamentalism and fundamentalist religion. So I'm really trying to figure out what that means, and also what it means to be brought up in a very faith-based environment and then to lose it. And to not have faith, and what, how do you define yourself when you lose your faith? So that's kind of the question that I'm taking up. But the actual story is about a young boy who grows up in a cult in India, and he is believed to have healing powers and is believed to be an avatar of Vishnu. And he grows up and figures out that the actual truth is a lot darker and is a lot more complicated than what he was told. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you. So just to wrap up, we have one final question. This one is for Alan, and kind of goes along with our discussion on theory. Alan, could you talk about Piñata theory as a title? What inspired it? Was there a sort of epiphany? Did the title come before the book?
Cool. Thanks for asking that. No, the title came pretty deep into the process because I was exploring a lot of things. I was trying to let them, organically arise, and writing what was coming to me. And I was in a parking lot, and I listen to basically only rap, which is one of my limitations. I'm trying to break out of it, but there was a song from a Chicago rapper that was called Stop Sign Theory. And I remember I was vibing with that. And I very much am heavily influenced from other genres, kind of like how Mike, you know, is mixing with playwriting. I love hybrid stuff. So like I wanted that to be included. I was writing heavily about being Mexican American, being Californian, being Chicano, being Pocho. So I knew I wanted to have some way to link it to that in a cultural sense. So I just kind of mashed those two energies together. And I was really thinking about the idea of fragmentation, which I've mentioned already, brokenness. And I started thinking about the phases of a piñata, how you take a bunch of scraps of things and then you try to make something out of those scraps, and then you fill that body of scrappage with things inside. And then, like I said, we break it and smash it and we cheer and we clap. And then we gather it all back and we put it back in our bodies. And it was like this weird, violent moment of joy, right? Like this public violence. Yeah. So I don't know, like I wanted all of that to be in it. And also there was definitely the element of like, I don't know if interested is the right word, but I definitely, you know, I live in a community where like you can see violent acts happening. And I'm talking about like institutional violences, right? And that kind of goes back to what I was saying about gentrification and just acknowledging that California is such there's been so much blood spilled on this soil of people just grabbing this piece of the earth over and over and over again, right? Before it was the US, we were on Mexico. Before it was Mexico, it was indigenous land. And I'm sure there's different groups of indigenous people, right? And I kind of wanted all of that to be a part of it, and just how fragile we all are and how fragile and violent history is. Yeah, and how some of us are more likely to be targeted by some of these historical violences.
All right. Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, I definitely see that in the book, and that's one of the things that makes me really enjoy it. So, yeah, thank you so much. And but here's the cover again. But thank you to everyone for being here, and I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm glad y'all were still able to make it. And thank you again to our readers. Make sure and check out their books online. I personally like to shop on bookshop.org to support local bookstores and especially independent booksellers right now, and the authors themselves. So you can find everyone's book on there, I believe. But thank you again. And hopefully we'll see you around at our next event. You can follow us on Twitter, bandwidth _, and on Instagram, bandwidth reading series. Stay tuned for our next event. Thank you again.